best friends. I'm Tabby.
And I'm Caitlin, and today we are doing Poetry Corner featuring the works of Shel Silverstein.
So, just a little bit of background about our boy Shel. He is an entrepreneur. He really made a name for himself. So, he was actually born in Chicago in 1930. I did not think he was that old.
Wow,
Yeah,
1930.
1930, before World War II, he was born.
Wow.
Um, So he is not only an American writer and poet, but he was also a cartoonist, a singer-songwriter, a musician, and a playwright. And
Talented
he
man.
was very successful in all of these categories. So some songs you may know by him. I don't know if you've ever heard a song or the song called A Boy Named Sue.
I've not.
It's one of my favorite Johnny Cash songs. He actually wrote that for Johnny Cash and won a Grammy for it.
Amazing.
Um, He's also written popular songs like the cover of the Rolling Stones, I'm Checking Out, and One's on the Way, which were all used in like a lot of TV shows and movies in the early 90s and 2000s.
I wonder if I would recognize them if I heard them.
I bet you
Probably
would.
would. That's
I bet
cool.
you would. He also rose to fame in the 50s for his adult-oriented articles. He notably was a cartoonist and writer for Playboy. He was very, very good friends with Hugh Hefner, and one of his baby mamas was actually a Playboy bunny.
Amazing.
Yeah, super fun of him. Before he started writing for children, he published under the name of Uncle Shelby, which is creepy.
Yeah, I kind of
Um,
hate that.
But one of his first books was Uncle Shelby's ABZ book, which was an adult-oriented alphabet book, also
Okay.
probably for Playboy.
I was like, I don't know what that
Um,
means, but okay.
so he was eventually persuaded to start writing children's work by his editor. Her name was Ursula Nordstrom. And some of his, pretty widely acclaimed books are like The Giving Tree, Where the Sidewalk Ends, and A Light in the Attic. Those are, I think, probably his three most famous pieces of work. So he actually did not graduate from college. He was drafted into the military before he finished school. And so he is not trained in poetry or in writing, anything like that. And that is why you see such a unique form when it comes to his poetry. It's very conversational, it's very casual. And it kind of sets him apart, I think, from a lot of, I guess, more notable poets. I
Mhm.
feel like it's probably more common now because poetry has become more of like whatever fits your own style type
Right.
thing. But I feel like he kind of paved the way for that.
Yeah.
Some of it is, kind of Buddy Wakefield-esque, and I
I was
really
gonna
enjoy
say,
that.
yeah, it kind of feels
Um,
spoken word a little bit.
mhm. So I feel like maybe Buddy Wakefield probably draws some inspiration from Shel Silverstein. But like I said, he never married. He did have two children, though, Shoshana and Matthew. So his daughter Shoshana actually died at the age of 11 from an aneurysm,
Oh,
which is really sad. But A Light in the Attic was written in dedication of her memory,
oh my God, I
which
did not
Caitlin's
even know
covering.
that.
So he accomplished a lot in his unfortunately very short life. He did die of a heart attack at the age of 68,
Hmm.
and left a very large legacy in his wake. His son Matthew is actually a singer-songwriter as well.
Well, rest in poetry, Shell.
Yeah,
Is that
super
insensitive?
fun. No, I'm sure he would have liked it. He seemed like that type of guy.
Perfect. We know him personally,
Perfect.
so.
So we'll start with our poems. I actually chose two kind of shorter poems, but I feel like there's a lot to unpack in these very short poems, which I feel like could be said for a lot of his works.
Hmm.
So the first one I chose was How Many, How Much. So it starts, how many slams in an old screen door? Depends on how loud you shut it. How many slices in a bread? Depends on how thin you cut it. How much good inside a day? Depends on how good you live them. How much love inside a friend? Depends on how much you give them. The poem, he uses iambic pentameter, you can tell because it like has kind of that rhythmical feel to it, kind of like a
Hmm.
heartbeat. Um, for the rhyme scheme, he used XABA, XCBC, which is I feel like one of the more common patterns. In the very short poem, it's only 8 lines long. It depicts, it could be portrayed as one or two speakers. It could also be like kind of like an internal monologue if you want to look at it that way as well, where one is asking questions, the other is giving answers. The main theme of the poem is that you only get what you're willing to put into something, whether, that be something negative, something positive, something that's really important, something that maybe just more of like a common day thing. But that's always going to be what you see in return.
I love that. I haven't heard that one before.
It is, I believe, From Where the Sidewalk Ends. Both of mine are From Where the Sidewalk Ends.
Yeah, good one.
Which is one of my favorite books.
Yeah, so I'll start with my first one, which is Falling Up, which is from the book Falling Up. Okay, so Falling Up. I tripped on my shoelace and I fell up to the rooftops, up over the town, up past the treetops, up over the mountains, up where the colors blend into the sounds. But it got me so dizzy when I looked around, I got sick to my stomach and I threw down.
Oh.
So this poem, first thing that we probably notice is there is like some rhyme and near rhyme throughout, but it doesn't have like a super structured rhyming scheme. But like there's town, mountains, sounds, around, and down are kind of like almost every other line. But it doesn't have like a super like strong like cadence to it. Also, something fun that he does is it's called anaphora, which is repeating the first word or phrase of a sentence. So when it's up to the rooftops, up over the town, up past the treetops, and that's something that you see a lot in like speeches when people are really emphasizing something. So that's really emphasizing the like, being up in the sky and flying around part of the poem. And then there's also the fact that the narrator of this poem fell up and they threw down, which I had a hard time landing on which term actually like fits this the best, because there's neologism, which is like creating your own words. So I don't really think it's that so much as it is a spoonerism, but I had never heard of a spoonerism before.
Ooh, I haven't either.
And traditionally spoonerisms are unintentional. So it would be like saying you have hissed the mystery lectures instead of you have missed the history lectures. So it's like flipping the wrong, like you flip the wrong letter or something. And so it makes it a little nonsensical. But I don't know if there's an exact term for what it is he's done here. Anyway, I interpret this poem as a metaphor for growing up. So for me, it paints this image of a little boy. He trips on his shoelace. So it's like he's probably young. Maybe he doesn't know how to tie his own shoes. But he trips, and when he falls up, or I think grows up. And he's flying high through the sky. He's absolutely loving it. He's flying over mountains. He's like, this is so dope. And he's loving all this newfound freedom that's coming with growing up. But then he grows up enough to realize that actually it's kind of scary.
Yeah.
He takes a look around and becomes sick to his stomach and immediately just plummets from his carefree mindset. And he's like, and then I threw down.
Got that Icarus effect.
Mom, I threw down. Yeah, he did be flying too close to the sun. But I think it's a really cute little poem about growing up.
And I think what I love, the most about Shel Silverstein is that even though he did choose to write, children's literature, he did so in a way that was still, kind of preparing them for the real world.
Yeah, and I'll touch on that more too in the second poem that I chose.
So the second poem I chose is Masks, which I think is probably one of his most popular ones.
Yeah, it's a good one.
But it starts, she had blue skin and so did he. He kept it hid and so did she. They searched for blue their whole life through, then passed right by and never knew. So for this poem, Silverstein once again uses the iambic pentameter, and the rhyme scheme is A, B, A, B, but then it's C, C, D, C. So it's a really short 8-line poem, but It carries a lot of different meanings, I think. So I think just at face value, obviously they're talking about, their outward appearance, the way they look. There is a little bit of anxiety that comes with, how they view themselves or how other people view them. And so they decide to like hide who they are. And then by doing so, they actually miss out on other people who are the same as them. So a misconnection. There's also a lot of symbolism that goes into this that could also be compared to some real life issues with, race, skin color, orientation, so like outward appearance. So I think it touches it's a symbolism for alienation in that people feel like they have to hide who they truly are so that they, I guess, fit in a little bit more with what is considered normal or general in the population. But in doing so, you're not seeing other people who, empathize with you or are the same as you. And so everybody just is hidden behind a mask.
Yeah. That's deep.
It is deep. It was a deep poem for only being 8 lines.
I know. He's so good at it. So the second poem I chose is A Light in the Attic. I actually did not know it was written in memory of his daughter that had passed away.
Mm-hmm.
But that makes it even more touching, honestly. So, A Light in the Attic. There's a light on in the attic, though the house is dark and shuttered. I can see a flicker and flutter, and I know what it's about. There's a light on in the attic. I can see it from the outside, and I know you're on the inside, looking out.
Aww.
Something neat about this poem is it's free verse, so there's not like a set rhythm to it, but there is rhyme. But again, because it's not quite this, it doesn't follow like iambic pentameter or anything like that. It doesn't have like a super set pattern to the rhyming. Shuttered and flutter go together. About and out at the very end go together. So a light on in the attic is a phrase that means someone is bright or smart. So what I think is an interpretation of this poem is that the narrator is observing a young person or someone who's not confident in themselves or their abilities. And this person is afraid, and they keep their house dark and shuttered off to the scary world around them. But the narrator knows that this person is bright and capable. But the person on the inside of the house can't see their own light on in the attic because they're looking out the window instead of in. And so it's kind of like your mentor knows that you're capable and smart and bright, but you aren't seeing yourself the way that your mentor sees you or your loved one sees you. But I think that's just like, it probably has even more meanings now that I know that it's dedicated to his daughter's memory. Yeah. And I wonder, if we'll ever really know what he meant, because it's probably something personal.
Because then when you see like there's light on in the attic, I can see it from the outside, and now you're on the inside looking out. Like it could be like, he maybe sees reminders of his daughter. He maybe sees like the ghost of her and things.
And then she's like looking down on him
from
the afterlife, or, some version of that.
Or maybe like the house is dark and shuttered. That could be, just how he views like his own life or like himself. And like,
now that his
memory is like her bright light.
So yeah, it's just amazing that poems can have so many meanings. But I would like to say, in conclusion, Shel Silverstein's poetry is extremely valuable to young people and old people, but I think like it's made for young people. Growing up is hard and it's scary, and Silverstein's work is really important because oftentimes it's goofy and it provides those kiddos with entertaining poems to read and learn about poetry. But he writes a lot of poems that have really meaningful messages to encourage and to intrigue young minds. So I think,
and I wonder if that's the case because he did live such like a varied lifestyle that like he's probably seen it all and experienced it all, and it made it, easier for him to write it in a way for like younger kids to understand.
Yeah, really. I think that like his poems are like that advice that you get, maybe not even from your dad necessarily, but like your older brother, or like it seems like someone who's older and wiser, but not necessarily your father figure. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it seems like it's from like the fun uncle or like your best friend's big sister. Like
Your
it's just
fun Uncle Shelby.
your fun Uncle Shelby. Exactly.
But that wraps up Poetry Corner. It was a nice, short, sweet little mini-sode for you. We are, just a reminder, covering Promises and Pomegranates next week. So if you want to read it, if you haven't started it, please check your trigger warnings before beginning.
So get started on that book. We'll talk to you next week. And as always,
Let's get lit.